The Road Show continues right now. I am David Warren, and joining me during this segment is Michael David Harrelson, author of the brand new book, Why We Don't Vote. Now, the statistics are staggering, and not in a good way. For example, 4 years ago, when Barack Obama was elected President of the United States, only 57% of voting-age population actually voted. So why did 43% not vote? Well, here to give his reasons as to why is Michael David Harrelson, who goes by David. So we want to welcome another David to the Road Show. Good to have you with us, Dave.
Thanks for having me, David. I really appreciate it.
Well, the name of your new book, as I said, is Why We Don't Vote. You are very passionate about this subject. Tell us why the new book is out.
I would love to, and first of all, I would like to thank our U.S. veterans for giving us the freedom to live in this country and to just be able to vote. Their sacrifices too often go unrecognized, and I want to thank them. A lot of people just simply don't vote based upon the scripture Hosea 4:6. It says, "My people perish for a lack of knowledge." It's not taught in the school systems. So far, lately it hasn't been being passed down from parents and grandparents. The need for to take place in local elections, in regional elections, and in national elections. And one of the things that we've discovered by being involved in youth ministry for about 15 years is that young people just don't see the need to vote. They've kind of been disenfranchised by the media. A lot of times when they do participate in local elections, it's just because of a national ad campaign saying rock the vote or get the vote out, and they're just kind of mindlessly going out and following the world, for lack of a better word. Mm-hmm. And we've addressed a lot of the issues in this book of why young people don't get involved and why they don't participate in our electoral process.
Well, and this trend has been going on for quite some time. I'd like to read a statistic from your book. I noticed that for 40 years, the percentage of those who vote during a presidential election year hover near 50%. Now, other federal election years, such as 2010, for example, only 1/3 of Americans voted, and that's been the trend as well for non-presidential voting years. Only 1/3 of Americans tend to go to the polls. So let's look now at some of the most common reasons that you cover in your book on why people don't vote. As I get ready to ask you about some of these reasons, is there a number one or main reason that you've noticed?
I think among young people, they just seem to think that their single vote doesn't count. And one of the ways we address that in the book is by pointing out how many elections have been won throughout the decades by a single vote margin, or maybe just a margin of 4 or 5 votes. There's been numerous major elections that have been won or lost just by single-digit numbers. And I think when kids understand that their vote really does count, and when we go through and explain the difference between a democracy and a representative republic, they then understand that their vote truly does count. It says something about who they are. It says something about the community that they live in, and they realize the importance of it, especially when they understand that people have died for their privilege to be able to participate.
Right. You know, the older some people get, and I'm saying just some, they get jaded because year after year or election after election, they believe that nothing changes, so why bother to vote this time? How do you answer that?
Well, we point out instances that happen in the local communities, and that's because it is hard to see evidence of your vote in a larger regional or national election. But we come back to the school board level. We come back to the city councilman level and the governor level, and we begin to illustrate how, you know, why are there certain areas of cities that develop and other areas that don't? Why do the roads get repaired in some areas and other areas it's like driving on a corn cob? And we point out to those individuals that, you know, if you don't go to that city council meeting, if you're not familiar with what the issues on the ballot are, and if you don't make an informed vote and exercise your right, then how can you complain about the conditions that you live in?
Dave, I think for myself personally, and I'll tell on myself because now I'm 46, and yes, there have been a time or two that I did not go to vote. I think my reason would be because, and it's not a good one, let me just add that, is because I'm ignorant on certain things. Now, maybe not on who to vote for president, because we're barraged by ads and talk shows about the presidential candidates. But, for example, state questions. Many times I haven't gone because I just didn't know, but also it's my fault because I didn't take the time to know. So where can you steer us to help us find out some answers to our questions if we don't know?
You know, David, the Internet is a wealth of resources for topics such as state questions. You know, I attend a church that I love. It's in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and a lot of our members have passed that they would just as soon had gone in a different direction, and so they come to us and become members, and they don't often know that even though they may have had an incarceration in their past, that they're still allowed to vote once their sentence is completed. And that brings me to this point about a state question. You know, on the ballot, November 6th coming up, we have State Question 762, and it involves whether or not the governor is going to participate in parole decisions. That's a very big topic for members of our congregation, and I'm sure it is for other people too. Researching those state questions on the Internet, contacting your local governments and asking them what's going to be on the ballot is probably two of the best ways to get yourself informed.
We're talking to a large audience today, and let me go ahead and interject who our guest is right now. If you've just turned your radio on, this is The Road Show. I'm David Warren, your host during this segment of the program. Michael David Harrelson has written a new book entitled Why We Don't Vote, shedding light on why only just a little over half of those who qualify to vote actually do vote in presidential election years, and then just a third in non-presidential election years for federal offices and other things such as state questions. Again, a large listening audience today, Dave. Ohio is where we have one of our affiliates tuned in, and that is the state under the spotlight right now for this presidential election for 2012. And so every vote counts. That's an obvious thing I could say right now. But for example, in our state of Oklahoma, I've heard that we're the reddest state in the union, so I think some people don't go. Their excuse for not going, and it's not a good one, and you're going to tell us more about this. They think, well, we already know who's going to win for president in the state of Oklahoma, so why go? So talk to that issue.
Well, your point is valid, but, you know, there are often other issues that are available to vote on in these elections. It also makes a statement for the state and what the state believes. There are a number of statisticians and analytics that take place after the election. And so even if you're pretty sure that the vote is going to go one way or the other, it still makes sense to have your vote recorded. That goes down in history, and it represents where you live. And so let's say a radical individual were to want to come and push an agenda in your state. Well, you know, if they see that it's an 80% red state, they might be a little less likely to come and try to get that radical initiative on the ballot at all.
That's a very good point. That's an excellent point. Have you had a chance yet to hear feedback from your readers? This is a new book.
Yes. I had one mother come up to me at my son's football game, and she said, you know, I was really just kind of put out with the whole voting process. I'd been turning off the TV. I just didn't want to hear about it anymore. And I read your book, and she said, you know, I'm not real happy about it, but I'm tuning back in, I'm educating myself, and I am going to go and vote. And that was just right after we had released the book, and it was a real motivator for me that we had done something good.
Dave, do you believe there's any good reason not to vote?
I can't really think of a good reason not to vote. I hear all the time, you know, why do I want to vote for the lesser of two evils? You know, and I do understand that dilemma, but oftentimes when you're up against a feeling or a challenge like that, search your heart, take your beliefs to the cross, and ask the Lord, what am I the most convicted about? Is it abortion? Is it the definition of marriage? Some of these major issues are very cut and dry. They make what's known as a single-issue voter. And if you have a check in your spirit about some of these single issues, then it makes the selection process pretty easy, because you can't vote for the person that goes against what God has placed in your heart.
I know a lot of people who vote based on the candidate's stance on the country of Israel, for example, and that's a big deal to them.
It is a big deal. Joel 3, verse 1 and 2 makes it very clear that the nations will be judged by how they have treated Israel. God will bring the final deliverance to Israel and the city of Jerusalem. And when that happens, he's going to look at those nations that have either scattered Israel or have divided Israel or in somehow disenfranchised his people. And those nations will be judged.
Dave, do you have kids?
I have 3 boys.
3 boys. Now, what are you teaching them on the power of a single vote?
Well, a lot of what I've already been talking about. I've got a 22-year-old, a 19-year-old, and a 7-year-old, and I have to tell the folks that the reason this book exists is because my spirit-filled, wonderful wife came to me several years ago and said, we need to become a homeschool family. And I reluctantly gave in to that. At the time, I didn't really understand the value. And now it's been a huge blessing for us. My 19-year-old was in the middle of his U.S. history, and I was vigorously trying to find some curriculum that wasn't some type of rewritten history that went out and educated the kids on the Christian beliefs of our founding fathers, and didn't try to tell them that they were atheists and deists. And it was very difficult to find. So I ended up writing the curriculum for him myself, and actually that curriculum is what has turned into this book. And that's why there's a workbook at the back of the book so that homeschool families can actually have their students do the work at the back of the book and then give them credit.
Well, congratulations on the new book. And for those who are interested in purchasing it, let me give you the name that you can look up on Amazon.com. That's where you'll find the book, both in softback and also in ebook formats. I know that the time is a-ticking before the general election coming up on November 6th, so you can download it in ebook format on Amazon.com. And the name of today's guest, the full name, Michael David Harrelson. And Harrelson is spelled Harrelson. And again, the name of the new book, Why We Don't Vote. But we are going to vote, David, this November the 6th. Thank you so much.
Fantastic.
Thanks for being with us.
I'd like to also direct people to our website, www.whywedon'tvote.com. No special characters, just whywedon'tvote.com. You can read more about the book there. And also, please check out the Pledge of Allegiance page. I think you'll find it interesting.
We'll do it. All right, Dave, thanks so much. I'm David Warren, and the Road Show will continue after this.